A growing problem here in the state of Michigan is interactions between our regular populations and coyotes, growing population of them here in the state of Michigan. And here to talk to us about what the state of Michigan is doing to combat this growing population of coyotes and the ways that they are affecting our communities is Adam Bump. He is with the Department of Natural Resources. He is a Furbearer and Upland game bird specialist in their wildlife division. Adam, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Appreciate having you on. So approximately how many coyotes are there per the DNR's estimates in the state of Michigan? And at this current time, how much is that estimate veering from what's normal among this population in our state?
Well, Michigan actually doesn't have a population estimate, statewide population estimate. Fur bears like coyotes can be extremely difficult to generate a population estimate. And it's not always the most useful number to try to track trends in coyotes and to manage them. So what we look at is impacts. So the types of things, problems they may be causing or positive impacts some wildlife have. And then we look at trends in harvest information. So coyotes are something that a species that can be hunted or trapped. And some of that data from harvest surveys can give us idea of how the population is trending in broad context. In recent years, I would say that the population has probably been pretty stable. But if you go back, say, let's start in the 70s or 80s, coyote populations are dramatically higher than they would have been in the 70s or 80s. I think a lot of the current questions and issues with coyotes are probably more related to changes in behavior or their ability to adapt to more urban and suburban areas where people may be seeing them more, even if the population isn't necessarily higher.
So Adam, where typically are we seeing these coyotes be particularly problematic in our state? Is it more in the rural areas, or have those problems really begun to arise in more of the suburban and urban areas of Michigan?
I think the number of public complaints or public concerns that we hear is higher in suburban and urban areas. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. In rural areas, it's more likely that people are hunting and trapping them or are able to legally hunt and trap them and don't have restrictions that might exist in an urban area. Coyotes probably have a higher level of natural fear of people just because of that interaction that they have. And in urban and suburban areas, I think we have a situation where coyotes have been in urban and suburban areas for quite a while, but now we have multiple generations that have been in urban and suburban areas. They've learned how to read or interpret human behavior. And when they become comfortable with us and understand what we're doing from day to day, they're more willing to be visible. So you have this situation where maybe not that many more coyotes, they're more comfortable with people. They don't really worry about letting themselves be seen. They may start associating urban and suburban areas and people with food. You know, we have trash that may be out. We may leave pet foods outside. And so that association with food makes them even more willing to allow themselves to be seen. So, and just that being seen or heard often increases public concern and increases the number of calls or questions that we get about coyotes.
Yeah, because people are worried about their gardens being out in their yards and coyotes getting those and eating some of those materials. Certainly having any sort of negative interactions between the coyotes and their pets, outdoor cats, dogs, or other animals that they are protecting in their homes are also a concern. So what can individuals and what can families do to prevent some of those negative interactions with coyotes, if they can at all?
Well, one of the major things is to never intentionally try to feed coyotes or pet them or befriend them, I guess you could say, in any way. Another would be to try to keep anything that coyotes think of as food. So don't feed pets outside. Don't leave trash out overnight. You can keep your yard in a condition that doesn't encourage mice and other coyote prey to be present. Those are some of the major ways that you can try to reduce coyotes' interest in your area. With pets, we advise caution with smaller pets, not leaving them outside alone at night. If you've heard in the neighborhood that there might be coyotes, you might want to be outside with the animal when they go out to go to the bathroom or whatever you may have your pet outside for, and just be conscious of that fact. Coyotes will prey on small pets. I don't know that they're as responsible for missing pets as people want to give them credit for, but they absolutely could be. A lot of interactions with dogs are probably less about trying to eat the dog than territorial. Coyotes can be territorial in the spring and into the fall, and they perceive any canine, whether it's a coyote, a fox, or another dog or a dog, they perceive that as a threat if it's in their territory. So sometimes you get those interactions where they're actually just trying to tell the dog, I don't want you here. I think this is my space.
We're joined by Adam Bump from Michigan's Department of Natural Resources Wildlife Division. He's a furbearer and upland game bird specialist, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. Let's go into some of what you do in your role as a furbearer and upland game bird specialist at the DNR. What sort of things are you focusing on a daily basis to explore Michigan's wildlife in this particular area and help mitigate some of these issues that people may have with some of this wildlife?
So my job is a statewide position that oversees currently those two programs. So fur bearing animals, Michigan has 17 species that are considered fur bearers that have harvest seasons, so hunting and or trapping seasons. And then the upland game birds are things like turkeys, ruffed grouse, pheasants, those kinds of species. So I look at stakeholder engagement, so interactions like we're having today to try to educate people about the biology of the species, give them information on how to have positive interactions with those species rather than negative interactions. I am responsible for evaluating regulatory changes, so hunting and trapping regulations. I'll work with our stakeholder groups and look at the biology of the species as well as what stakeholders are concerned or interested in and propose changes in harvest regulations. I also deal with habitat needs of the species. So natural history, just a general understanding of the biology of those animals as well as their habitat needs, and serve as the expert for wildlife division and our partners in trying to provide information on habitat needs.
Plenty of additional education and safety as well as resource management information can be found at michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. For more information, you can find more info also on invasive species, wildlife permits, wildlife viewing, as well as education and safety for a number of different facets for youth, for educators, just general safety information as well. Great resource at michigan.gov/DNR. Going back to the coyotes, so often we hear them be compared to other canines, in particular wolves. What are some of the key differences, especially in behavior, between wolves and coyotes among those populations in Michigan?
Coyotes are abundant and found throughout the state, and wolves are much less abundant. They're currently still on the endangered species list. Michigan DNR considers them recovered. We've met recovery goals, but they are on the federal endangered species list, and we do look to maintain protections on wolves. They're much larger. Biologically, wolves function in a structured pack system. So they have groups of animals that hunt together and behave in a specific way that is a pack sort of behavior, hunting, the way they raise their young. Coyotes in the eastern U.S. Have loose packs, so they may have associations. You may have pairs that hunt together. You have family groups that hunt together a little bit, but it's not nearly as structured as a wolf pack. You get solitary coyotes that will hunt on their own and never form groups and never pack up. So they have kind of a varied behavior, but it's much less structured than wolves. Their prey base is a little different. Coyotes are capable of taking down things up to and including deer, but they really focus on small mammals, whereas wolves are focusing more on larger game like deer and even moose in some areas in the Upper Peninsula.
Adam, before we let you go today, a couple more minutes, any other information at this time that would be important for people to be considering in their homes, in rural areas and suburban or urban areas regarding fur bearers or upland game birds, especially at this time of the year where things are still relatively warm enough for these birds to be out and these other animals to be out and about and interacting with our communities?
I always advise caution with any form of wildlife, not to approach, not to try to feed them, give them a healthy respect. And that's the best way to keep them safe and you safe. Animals that get comfortable with people are the ones that are most likely to cause negative interactions. This time of year, coyotes young are getting close to adult size. They become very vocal. So they're traveling as a group, as a family group. When they encounter another family group, they become very vocal. So we get a lot of calls. It can sound very like a lot of animals just because of the way they interact. So just be aware that's normal behavior. And then I would just, coyotes can be active year round. So seeing a coyote during the day or all day long. So seeing a coyote during the day doesn't necessarily mean bad behavior. It's just something to keep your eye on. Tyler, you mentioned that we have information on our website. We do have a brochure that's on the website that is specifically oriented towards understanding coyotes and coyote behavior and how to kind of learn to get along with them in urban and suburban areas. So if people are in those areas and they have concerns about coyotes, I would encourage them to check that brochure out. It's got a lot of good information that kind of summarizes what we talked about today.
Well, we appreciate you joining us, Adam, and appreciate the work that you're doing to help inform people in the public about some of these interactions that are becoming a little bit more common across different areas of our state. And people need to know how to interact with these animals to protect themselves and their other loved ones, including their furry friends.
Thanks for having me, giving me a chance to do that.